Hello, I'm on the road between Kilkenny and Kells, and there we have a rag bush or a rag tree, because I want to tell you how you can map them. If you're wondering why you should map them, it's because you know your area best and you know what's there. No better person to map your area than yourself. This is probably the most well-known rag tree in Kilkenny, County Kilkenny. I'm just going to cross the road trying not to get run over. There was once a holy well here as well, which was turned into a pump, which is now disused. As you can see, the handle is lying on the roof there. But there is the rag tree. It's a very, very old tradition, probably even older than Celtic. And you can see all the rags here that people have tied to the tree. I think it's a hawthorn. It seems to have red berries. There very often are hawthorns. There's a couple of rags on the ground as well because it has been quite windy, and it is called St. Patrick's Raggedy Bush or rag tree. There's a sign here where you can see that. St. Patrick's Raggedy Bush, age-old tradition. And there's also a Boulogne stone, or a stone where it's believed that St. Patrick knelt down on and left his knee print. He must have had massive knees. I think it's this one there. I'm not entirely sure. I was here before with someone who knew better, but I can't remember. So this is the tree, and the tradition, the Celtic tradition is, and it might go, as I said, much further back, is that these trees, rag trees in Scotland called clootie trees, are often near a holy well. So if you have an affliction, let's say sore eyes, because there are a lot of Tobar na Siúl in Ireland, eyed wells, you take a piece of cloth and you dip it in the water of the holy well and you wash out your eyes, and then you tie the rag to the tree, the bush, and by the time it has rotted away on the tree, your eyes should be all right again. But as you can see, a lot of people are using synthetic fibres now, and that's going to take quite a bit longer. I mean, there's even lichen growing on these ones, and that will take quite a while to develop. But anyway, people are still keeping up this tradition, even though it's thousands of years old, and there are similar traditions in other cultures. They're also obviously associated with Christianity. So the main tag I chose to use was, apart from natural equals tree, is place of worship, sacred tree. I didn't want to go for holy tree because we want to have it available for other cultures and religions as well, other than Christianity. So I will show you the tagging scheme on the wiki, and you can read it up on the wiki as well. You don't have to take notes of me doing this. But before we look at the tagging scheme for OpenStreetMap, I want to read you a little bit from Cinderella, because I think there are remains of that belief in holy or wishing trees in that story. Not in the Disney version, but in the, I want to call it the original Brothers Grimm version, which is not the original, they just collected it. I think it goes back to an Italian fairy tale. But the version I grew up with, the Brother Grimm version, has this kind of a tree in it, and I just want to read you excerpts from that fairy tale. And if you don't like fairy tales, you can just skip ahead to the mapping part. So it starts off with, her mother dying, and they're burying the mother in the garden, and the father marries again within a year, and she gets the stepsisters. And I'm gonna start reading the story. It happened one day that the father went to the fair, and he asked his two stepdaughters what he should bring back for them. "Fine clothes," said one. "Pearls and jewels," said the other. "But what will you have, Cinderella?" said he. "The first twig, father, that strikes against your hat on the way home, that is what I should like you to bring me." So he bought for the two stepdaughters fine clothes, pearls, and jewels. And on his way back, as he rode through a green lane, a hazel twig struck against his hat, and he broke it off and carried it home with him. And when he reached home, he gave to the stepdaughters what they had wished for, and to Cinderella he gave the hazel twig. She thanked him, and went to her mother's grave and planted this twig there, weeping so bitterly that the tears fell upon it and watered it, and it flourished and it became a fine tree. Cinderella went to see it 3 times a day and wept and prayed, and each time a white bird rose up from the tree, and if she uttered any wish, the bird brought her whatever she had wished for. Now it came to pass that the king ordained a festival that should last for 3 days, to which all the beautiful young women of that country were bidden, so that the king's son might choose a bride from among them. And so on and so on, and the stepsisters want to go and she wants to go, but they give her chores that are impossible to solve, but the birds help her. That's very much like in the Disney version. And it's almost time to go to the ball or the festival. And we're back to the story. And as there was no one left in the house, Cinderella went to her mother's grave under the hazel bush and cried, little tree, shake over me, that silver and gold may come down and cover me." Then the bird threw down a dress of gold and silver, and a pair of slippers embroidered with silk and silver, and in all haste she put on the dress and went to the festival. And you all know how it ends. Happily ever after. But I think that's interesting, like she prays at the tree and she waters it with her tears, which could be seen as a sacrifice and so on. I think that's an interesting bit of possibly very old ritual that is preserved in the fairy tale. And it's not the only fairy tale that has very, very old elements in it. But I can't go into that now. We will look at the tags now. You will find the tagging scheme on the wiki.openstreetmap.org under the tag place of worship equals sacred tree. I will also link that in the video description in the chapters. And so far it's only there in English. And we have a little bit of an explanation of what it is, and then the tagging scheme is described here. The basic tags are natural equals tree, and then place of worship sacred tree, and then it depends on your situation really. Some of them do have a name. The one that we saw in the introduction on the British War Office map, it's called St. Patrick's Bush, and on the stone, as I showed you, it's called St. Patrick's Raggedy Bush. So I put the St. Patrick's Bush as the old name because the reference is older than the stone, I presume, and then as name I put the St. Patrick's Raggedy Bush there. Then you can add the religion, which is a bit tricky sometimes with the rag trees in Ireland. At least I find, unless you see people tie ribbons to it and you ask them what their religion is or why they do this, I would not like to presume that it's either Christian or neo-pagan or whatever, because the boundaries are a bit blurry there, I think. So I haven't added it to any of them. It stands to reason that because it's called St. Patrick's Tree that it is Christian, and then even denomination Roman Catholic. But I'm not quite sure how strict you really can say that. Since it is St. Patrick's Bush and we're just approaching St. Patrick's Day, I might go again after St. Patrick's Day and see if there are any changes. Then sacred tree : offerings to describe what is tied to the tree, which can be rags or pacifiers or beads or all kinds of things. You'll have to see for yourself what is the situation. And if it's not a rag tree, I don't know how it works in other religions, so I can't really tell you much about that. You might have to add something to the wiki there, or just engage in the comments in the video. Then you can define the genus of the tree if you can determine it. In winter it's a bit difficult because you don't have leaves on the trees, at least on the deciduous trees you don't have that. Some of them are evergreen trees. There are certain oaks that are evergreen, and I'm not quite sure about olive trees. There are some sacred olive trees, I think. I think there's one at the Parthenon. I'm not quite sure if olive trees are deciduous now. But anyway, try to figure out what the genus is, and then you can add the genus, either the Latin or the English or whatever your language is. Just use the exact language code there. And then it's always useful to have the genus Wikidata as well, because that would cover all the languages. And if you even know the species, you can add that as well. Same, either the Latin or your local language, or both. And sometimes they are in a heritage database, which is usually a local one, either a national one or a more localized one. And if they are, you can add the level, which will usually be level 2. It might depend on your country. In Ireland, I think we only have 1 and 2. 1 would be UNESCO World Heritage, and 2 is anything that's on the Historic Environment Viewer. It should be national monuments, and then level 3 should be anything that isn't a national monument. I'll talk about that later on as well, again. And then the reference to the heritage database. So in Ireland, that would be ref:/IE:/SMR for sites and monument records, which is also described in the wiki. And then you can add the Wikimedia Commons link using the Wikimedia_Commons key, and then linking either to one file if there's only one image available of that tree, or if there's a whole category for that tree, you can link to the whole category. And in the rare case that there is a Wikidata entry for them, some of them, I'm not sure about the one at the Parthenon, but that might have its only Wikidata entry, especially if it's a tourist attraction. I mean, that's another key you could add. Tourism equals attraction, which is kind of, if it's pilgrimage, it's kind of also tourism. Anyways. So I don't think any of the Irish ones have Wikidata entries yet. You can, of course, always create them, especially when they're on a heritage database. If you add a Wikidata entry, that might also include them in the next either Wikilove's folklore competition or in Wikilove's monument. It's kind of a monument, but it's heritage anyway. And then a survey date if you want to, just to make sure if it's in danger of being chopped down, at least you know when it was last seen alive. If you don't have a Wikimedia Commons link, but you have photographed it and have it on your own website or some local history group website, you can link to that using the image key. And of course, you can also always use Mapillary or any of the alternatives to Mapillary. If it is a rag tree, I would suggest using sacred tree equals rag tree as the sub-classification. People in Scotland might not like that because they don't use the word rag tree, they use clothy tree, but there are 3 different spellings for clothy tree, and rather than coming up with a compromise there, why not just use the Hiberno English word? And then they're often near a holy well or some other sacred water body. So don't forget to map that, because that is interesting to look at once we have a good data set, to see how many of them are actually near a holy well and how many are near a Boulogne stone, like this one. This is not the only example. I read about another one which I can't remember where it was now, but it's on the German Wikipedia page about rag trees, actually. There is a reference to a drilled stone near a holy well, and I presume it's a Boulogne stone. We don't use the word Boulogne in German because it's Irish, and I presume there might be a connection there too. But I just read up about the one in Kilmog or Racecourse, the one in the introduction, and there was a church there, even a church site. It's called Kilmog for a reason. It's not the forest, it's the Church of Moog. I presume it's the same guy who was in Timog in County Laois, and I think he was from Wexford. But the church is long gone, there's no trace whatsoever left. And the holy well was actually called Tubernacran or something, so the well of the tree. So it all fits in there. And this is the tagging scheme. If you want to add the holy well, I've linked the page to holy wells below there. And then we can actually go and we can't map it because it's already mapped, but we can add some of the tags that are listed here. Since I have already mapped this rag tree on the Kells Road, we'll just have to look at the tags that I've used instead of mapping it like I usually do in my videos. So I'm on OpenStreetMap.org. I've zoomed in on the tree. You can see the tree is mapped. That's this green thing here. And I'm logged in with my username, and we'll go into the ID editor by clicking on edit. And we have the tree symbol here and the historic symbol, that's for the Boulogne stone, but we're only concerned with the tree. It is mapped as, the first thing I would always type in, or the first tag I would add, is natural equals tree. That's the second one here, because it's a tree. And then the one for sacred tree, place of worship, sacred tree, as I said, rather than holy tree, because sacred tree applies to more religions and cultures. And then the subcategory would be sacred underscore tree equals rag underscore tree for the rag trees. And this one has its own Wikimedia category with 4 images, I think. So I have added the Wikimedia Commons key, and then linking to the category on Wikimedia is the name of the category. It starts with category : and then whatever the name of the category is. I have also added the Sites and Monuments Records number, which you will find on the Historic Environment Viewer. There are, I think, 106 last time I checked on the Historic Environment Viewer. They call them holy trees because, you know, it's Ireland. There's not a lot of different religions that have sacred trees recorded. It will be mostly Catholic ones. And then, because it's on that database, you can also give it the Heritage 2 tag. So Heritage 1 would be UNESCO World Heritage. Fairly unlikely for a sacred tree. There might be some. I'm not entirely sure. But if it is on a national database for heritage, it is Heritage equals 2. If it's only on a regional one, it would be Heritage 3. But what you mostly will get is Heritage 2. There should really be maybe a differentiation in Ireland between a national monument and a regular recorded monument, but since nobody really knows what a national monument is, we're just going to have to go with the one category. A class 2 relic, as they would call it. Those are the ones that you can use. If I knew that I'm fairly sure it's a hawthorn, so I might just add that. You can use genus, but you would have to have the Latin name, which I don't know off by heart. So I'm using the English genus, which is genus EN, hawthorn. I could of course look it up. The best way is probably Wikidata. Hawthorn. It's Crataegus. So this would be the Latin for the genus. And this is interesting to add because if we have more of them mapped, it'd be interesting to see how many are hawthorn, how many are holly, how many are hazel, and so on. And we'll also add the Wikidata for the genus, just to be on the safe side. And that would be genus Wikidata. And then you just paste that number that you find in brackets next to Crataegus. I don't know how to pronounce that. My English accent in Latin isn't great. And you see there are lots of other names, like German has lots and lots and lots of different names for the genus of hawthorn. Probably a lot of regional differences and so on, and even you see in French there are a couple of different ones, even in Swedish, and also in English there are at least 3. Irish is, I think it's just skjock, isn't it? But I'm not going to put that in, that's too risky. But there shouldn't be, the label shouldn't probably be in Latin for the Irish language. It should probably be skjock or whatever it is. I'm told that some people just call the rag trees skioch as well because they tend to be hawthorn. I haven't found out the Irish name for rag tree yet. I've written to the folklore department at UCD, but it might take a couple of weeks for them to reply. If anyone knows, please put it in the comments. And that, I think, is as thorough as I can be. I had thought about also adding sacred tree : offerings to list what is actually hung on the tree, because that could be interesting. Maybe I'll just do that to start it off. So sacred _tree : offerings. I'll use the plural. And in this case, it is mostly rags. But sometimes you get other offerings. You might get pacifiers, and we'll have to agree on a wording for that because some people call them dodies. But I think pacifier might be the more standard word for it. And sometimes you get beads. I think there was one wristband there at that tree that I saw. But I think rags will do for now. And we'll save that. Added details to rag tree. Sources survey, I suppose. And I add the hashtag rag tree. And upload. That of course doesn't change anything in how it is rendered, so I don't even have to refresh. But if I want to run an overpass turbo to see how many there are now mapped in Ireland, just zoom out a bit. I go into the wizard on overpass-turbo.eu, type in quotes sacred _tree equals rag _tree in Ireland. And most of them will probably be nodes, but I'm just gonna run this anyway. So these are the ones that are mapped so far. There should be loads more, but it's early days still. So there's one here in, oh yeah, that's the one near Muckross Abbey. I photographed that 3 years ago, I want to say. There's one that someone in the OpenStreetMap Telegram group pointed out. It's along one of those so-called magic roads where when you put your car in neutral, it seems to go uphill. And there are about at least 3 of these kinds of roads in Ireland. And then 2, I think, in County Kilkenny. And 1 in County Carlow, and 1 in County Laois, and 1 in County Meath, and 1 in Cavan? It's not Cavan? Not sure. No, it's not Cavan. County Meath as well. The other one must be Westmeath then. Anyway, so please add more if you know about them. You know, we have to get to at least 106. That's what the historic environment viewer has. That'd be great. And pictures. Please take pictures of them as well. That's interesting to know. And that's how you can map them. And hopefully I have inspired you. And if not, maybe you've learned something about Irish heritage, Irish culture, Irish folklore. And there might be other interesting videos on my channel that you might like. Why don't you check that out? And you might also want to subscribe, of course. And you'll see me again soon, hopefully, in another video. Slán go fóill.